Google's Nexus program first launched in 2009 with the Nexus One. It was meant to act not only as a reference for developers to design apps against and other things, but also to OEMs as an indicator of the priorities that Google sees for Android devices every year. With this year's expected announcement of not one but two Nexus devices made by HTC, Android Central says to expect a big shift in Google's strategy, namely that they simply won't be called Nexus anymore. And if that's true, then this is a pretty big deal because it's a major shift in strategy for Google's hardware ambitions. And I've been kind of feeling this for the last little while, that you really see Google kind of turning a corner with its approach to hardware, with its attitude towards the hardware that it actually creates in-house, in the sense that before there was always this fear and this discussion around, well, Google, can't make something too good because then it's going to upset the, partners that they have that are making Android great. I think maybe, and this kind of reaffirms that a little bit more in my mind, if it's true, that maybe Google just kind of feels like, all right, now let's just make a really great product and see if we can go toe-to-toe. And I think this is a good thing for their devices.
Do you think it's going to be called a Google phone? The Google phone?
That I don't know.
That's
what the Nexus One was rumored to be called before we knew that it was before we knew the terminology Nexus. It was, for like months leading up to that, the rumors were like the Google phone. So you kind of expected that at that time, and then we've all gotten so used to Nexus. But yeah, it sounds like they're kind of zeroing in on the marketing around this to be around the terminology that everyone knows, which is Google. So, it would be a Google phone, I guess, to a certain degree. I just don't know if that's going to be the brand name that this will ship under.
So it's not going to have stock Android. Can you explain what that means to me?
Well, okay, so there's stock or vanilla Android is another term that you hear. And up until now, Nexus devices have shipped with pretty much what vanilla Android or stock Android is it's Android right out of the box without any over-the-top customizations. Samsung has heavy kind of skinning and stuff with their UI that they put on top of the underlying Android functionality and interface and everything. Samsung puts their own on top. So does HTC to a certain degree. A lot of the companies making these phones and making their own UIs have kind of backed down from their heavily skinned approach and really kind of trimmed it down to more or less closer to the basics. Nexus is like the most basic. It's like, at least it has been historically, as close to the core of what Android was designed to be, with no extra fluff or no extra kind of UI additions or extra functionality. But Sundar Pichai has said very recently, I think it was either March or May, maybe it was May, that they're looking to differentiate the new, what we refer to now as Nexus devices, with extra features, maybe improvements to the UI or whatever. So it's a big difference. It's a big shift in how they're approaching these kind of in-house devices.
Got it.
Yeah.
So with the Nexus devices gone, can we call it the Nexit?
Ooh, I like that. Boy, yeah, that cuts a little too close to home since this is a political show today.
I know. I said we weren't getting political, and then I went ahead and
I like it, though. I like it. That's got to be in the title. Yeah, I think it remains to be seen whether this is whether this is going to be seen as a good thing or not. Because I think still, when you get to the core of why true hardcore fans of Android like Nexus, it's because Google did approach this as like a reference design for designers to follow, for hardware manufacturers to build around and kind of compare against and everything. If Google's stepping away from that reference design kind of history and going more in, let's just create a marketable phone, which it kind of sounds like that's probably part of what they're doing here. We'll see if that's a smart shift, and if developers are left kind of wondering like, well, what do I do now? This might be good for a consumer, but is it good for what I need to use it for?